Thank you for joining another episode of The Benefits Blueprint, securing your health and wealth. Thank you so much.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
I put Bailey's in mine.
Good call.
Starbucks special blend.
That's right. Secret menu.
Good call.
I brought my
I'll
own.
tell you how many times, like, when we do an investment committee meeting, or actually a renewal meeting, most people would love to have that.
That's true.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've walked into a client before, and the operations guy just slams his door. He
Like,
knows I'm there for
not
good
today.
news. Good news all around.
Not today, Satan.
Yeah. No. All right, Jarrett. Thank you so much for joining us today. Mr. Rowe,
Sir?
thank you. Welcome back, everyone. So just to kick it off, Jarrett, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey and the Raven Group, how the nonprofit nerd came to be, and kind of what your goals and mission are.
Well, thank you, and thanks for having me today. If there's one thing I can do, it's talk. So here we are. So I started my company, the Raven Group, 2009, because I was RIFT. I was reduction in force. Okay. So I never thought that I would grow up to be a business owner. However, I was raised by two business owners. Both my parents are entrepreneurs, which my mom, I credit her to my nonprofit journey truly, because we didn't have much, but what we did have was time. So we were picking up trash. We were baking cookies for Ronald McDonald House. We were at soup kitchens serving on Christmas morning, that kind of thing. So that really built into my culture of who I am. Went through and just really, I love communities. I love people. I love strong communities and strong people. So with my educational trajectory, I have an undergrad in mass communication, a master's in business administration. I also like to say, though, that I think I'm older than when the nonprofit management schools came out. So I have learned in the tried and true trenches.
School of Hard Knocks, right?
School of Hard Knocks, right. So I just love that. And that is really like my mom baking this into our DNA as a child, coming from being raised in a very small rural town of South Carolina. I'm all about community and relationship and being a servant leader and civically engaged. So fast forward all of that, right? 2009, I was RIFT. I started my LLC at that time and have been working exclusively with nonprofits and nonprofit leaders across the nation since then.
Awesome.
What's your mission for that? When you work with the leaders, what's your goal?
Yeah, well, my goal is sanity for all of us involved, myself too. Cheers to that. But really looking at it of how can we build sustainable business models for nonprofits that serve the communities. And the reason nonprofits exist is because there's a community problem. Yep. So how do we fix that, right? How do we eradicate hunger? Spoiler alert, we won't. However, we do need to support it. So my mission truly is, how can I support the leaders in our community that are helping to provide solutions?
And I'll just ask, Jarrett, do you have a specific nonprofit, type that you work with? Is it like size of the nonprofit? Is it the mission? Are you helping everybody that needs help? I mean,
I wish I could help everyone that needs help.
Sure.
So there's 1.8 million nonprofits registered in the U.S.
Smokes.
Yes, holy smokes.
How many here in Arizona?
33,000. Funny you asked that. Funny I had that in my head. So 33,000, and these are registered, right? So that means there are likely some that are not registered, or they're registered in the state, they're not registered with the IRS. Okay. So 1.8 million have done their due diligence with their state and the IRS. What was the question? My ideal. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So
the 33,000 in Arizona.
The
'Cause you got
33,000.
some hospital systems that fall into that category.
We
right?
do. Yeah, FQHCs we talked about. So really human service. That's where my heart thumps the loudest, right? It's like basic food, clothing, shelter.
How are you not out in LA County right now?
Who wants to be in LA County right now? Yeah, well, it's funny you say that. So I was helping a local organization here in Metro Phoenix, and I kind of made our tagline is, don't LA our Phoenix. Okay. Because with the homelessness population, individuals experiencing homelessness, it is a critical, problem, right? We've got to help this, and it's not getting better. Sadly, it's not getting better, but I'd rather stay
I
here.
was actually referencing the Palisades fire and stuff like that.
Well, okay. I went straight to homelessness.
No, I get it.
But you
Multiple
didn't
problems.
say San Francisco.
That's true. I did not say San Francisco.
Yeah. No, that's hard. And so, I mean, I could nerd out over that forever, but really it's like there are so many critical missions and you have natural disasters, right, that are happening across our globe. And so really fundraisers, in particular in the nonprofit sector, like every single day, there's a critical issue that needs help and support.
So how do nonprofits find the staffing and the operations to actually, it sounds like there's too many things to do and not enough people to do it. Because I don't know how you ever get enough people to do.
You don't.
Complete the mission. Yeah.
You don't. And then also, the other reason nonprofits exist is because our government doesn't have the capacity and the bandwidth to do what needs to be done, right? And so that's why in other countries, they're called NGOs, non-governmental organizations. So you don't. That's why most of us are overworked and underpaid.
Yeah. So how does that, so you need people, you need talent, you need organization. I get you have volunteers. I mean, you can probably round up a ton of volunteers at any given time to have something accomplished. But to do that, you need to have a core group of people
You do.
that are on staff and that they're trained.
Yeah.
So how do nonprofits actually, find the people? Because I got to imagine the pay is not the same as being in the private sector, right?
Yeah.
The benefits are probably a different alignment from the private sector. So how do you attract these, the top talent that you need so that you can fulfill the missions inside the nonprofits?
You hit the nail on the head for all of those. And I will also say I am a proud disruptor in that space where I will stand on my soapbox and I will advocate for competitive pay, right? Because this is amazing talent. So many of our nonprofit leaders could work anywhere. We choose this sector, right? So with that comes some, I don't know, concessions. So really looking at it, and I joked earlier that I was too old to go through a nonprofit management school. There are now, kids, literally elementary school, high school kids saying, I want to be a nonprofit leader. And they take that track. So that is happening. Okay. But for people like me that just fall into this space, right, it's really around what is our passion? How can we help our community in the mission? Who are the organizations in our local community doing that? And how do we help them, right? Beyond that volunteer. And sometimes it might come from that volunteer base. You might have a volunteer base that loves what they're doing and they're like, are you hiring? Because I would rather work here and do what we're doing here than the paper I'm pushing in my other, office kind of thing.
Right. Push the widget out the door.
Yeah.
So we see in the for-profit world that people are leaving jobs for benefits or higher pay. You're seeing it's just kind of a fulfillment in your realm, in the nonprofit space. Is that why people leave and kind of...
Well, I think what brings them in is fulfillment.
Yep.
We were talking earlier before we went here for the podcast. People leave, right, because of that overwork and underpay. We leave because we're in burnout. We maintain survival mode non-stop. Let me just tell you guys, and I'm sure you know this, that's not healthy.
Right.
I like how you whisper.
Yeah. That's
I'm
not
like, I
healthy at
need
all.
you to listen to this. It's not okay.
Yeah. No, we see it, right?
So,
But our listeners should know that we do health benefits here, employee benefits, including retirement plans and HR support. From your experience, what do you see are the challenges with nonprofits and maybe a lack of HR support or kind of like you're saying the burnout, right? So a lot of HR personnel or staff in for-profit are burnt out because they don't have the capabilities to manage or wear multiple hats.
Yeah.
What is that like in the nonprofit world?
Well, I was going to say, tell me that list again because I've never heard of any of it, right?
Yeah.
Do we actually have benefits in the nonprofit sector? Because I really think the benefits...
Well, the larger ones who have more than 50 people do.
Yes, and they should, and we all should, right?
We're required to, yes. We all should.
I think a lot of times...
Should's a bad word. It's based in guilt. So let's say that it would be appropriate for us to all have coverage
best.
that would help us financially
Right.
withstand a large expense.
So sadly,
that?
For that population, right?
when it looks at benefits, and I see this on job descriptions, right? The benefits look like free coffee, free pastries, first row parking, off on Fridays, casual wear. There's no retirement savings.
Yep.
There's no employee assistance programs. There's no dental whatever, right? And good luck getting your PTO approved.
Right.
Because we need you.
Yep.
Yeah, we need
a good
you.
point.
We're already at a skeleton staff, so I don't see that often. And when I do see it, I don't see it competitive in the other industries and the other sectors.
Right.
So when I come in, one of the service lines I do, I'm an interim executive director. So I've worn the hat of interim ED, I've worn the hat of interim COO, and others. But in those two particular roles, that's when I start to see, I pull back the curtains, right? I'm dusting off the dust bunnies, and I'm really seeing what is the foundation of this organization, and where could we improve? Where could we mitigate risk? And where could we improve for our culture, for our people, for our communities? And that's when I start talking about competitive pay.
Yep.
By the way, who is your HR person, right? And it's like,
and how many other functions are they performing inside the company?
absolutely.
Right. They're probably doing payroll. They could be
Everything.
answering the phone,
taking the trash,
taking the trash out,
updating the website.
Yep.
So what is the answer to that usually?
So-
Office manager? Or
Yeah. Honestly, it's anyone. It is anyone, someone.
Or it's why do we need that?
Why do we need that?
that's
Yeah.
right.
And
we hear that.
who has interest in it,
Yeah.
right? It's kind of like the IT person is the one who knows where to plug in the cable.
Right.
So okay.
I was that for many, many years. I graduated from that,
Well,
thankfully.
congratulations.
Moving on up.
So what I would say is really that's when I interject and say, I notice we don't have this support. I notice we are not prepared
Right.
to mitigate this risk. I notice we don't have our organization's employees covered, right? Like these benefits, that they need to be more than free coffee and pastries, although, thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So really looking at, okay, so what are these outsourcing options, right? Who exists that we can bring in to support us in this way? And that's really important because we don't have to, as nonprofits, and especially the smaller operating, we don't have to have a dedicated HR person on staff.
Exactly.
No.
But I do
Most small
think,
employers don't.
but I do think we need them on call.
You do.
For sure.
You do.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's really the basis of a fractional relationship. And you can do this from the financial side. You can do it from the human resources side, because a lot of these organizations probably don't need or can afford someone full-time. But they need the resources. And so the beauty of fractional is that we have organizations that work with us for an hour a month, or they just call us as needed and just say, you know what, somebody said something cross and I have to go, I don't know how to deal with it, and what are my next steps, or can you do it?
Right.
Or someone complained there's bananas that are rotting in the kitchen and now I got to go do an intervention. It's okay. That's
True
that's a
story.
little facetious. That actually
Banana bread.
True story.
that actually is a true story, but it was probably out of context. However, but you're absolutely right, is that the power of the fractional workforce in the specialties is that you can bring on a six-figure specialty for nothing close to that.
fraction of the cost.
A fraction of the cost, yes.
Yep.
But I do have a question too, because the things that I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that you have a couple different tensions. Number one is that you don't have the equal pay. So you have the tension of competing against the commercial industry, regardless of, it couldn't even be in the same industry, it could be something completely different, but you're competing against pay. You're competing against benefits. And so that's really affecting who you can bring on that's quality, so that you can round up the volunteers so that you can go work on the community side. But then you're also, I have to imagine, working on razor-thin budgets. So getting to a competitive pay basis could be the push-pull between, I'm not going to bring this extra person on.
Right.
Because if I have to do competitive pay, I have to reduce my staff.
That's right.
And my workforce. What would it look like from a leadership perspective if you could offer a benefits plan where your out-of-pocket expenses for your members would be zero? So they could see the doctor.
Right.
They would have a relationship with the family practice office, which we have to get more involved with because we need to have someone helping us direct care. Has to be the right one, and that's not for today's podcast. But if you can offer something that people have 24/7 that they can talk to, it includes mental health benefits, it includes a brick and mortar, and if something happens where they actually have to go take care of somebody or like someone they love or themselves when they're in a high emotional status, if we can waive their out-of-pocket expense, would that add value to at least the compensation to help? I mean, you're probably not going to get to equal pay because I know there's only 100 cents in every single dollar, and I think I say that every single podcast.
I think so.
So we should probably
We're on a roll with
New
that.
podcast name.
I need,
There's only 100 cents in a dollar.
but there's a lot of competition for that, and so would something like that help improve, folks coming into the organizations and stabilize them, and they're going to stick around longer?
So I think that's a no-brainer, right? And I think it's how do we get that in front of the leaders, the decision makers, so that they know this is an option and it's a viable option and it's one worth looking at. Absolutely. And mental wellness is so important because in the nonprofit sector, right, we are servant leaders. That's essentially our character.
Right.
So how are we taking care of our community if we're not taking care of ourselves?
Right.
Absolutely.
Yep. Yeah.
So it sounds like a no-brainer to me.
And I'm going to say there's something good that came out of COVID, but it really changed
bread
the
and cocktails.
So sidebar, when we were supposed to be locked down for 2 weeks, Kathy and I went out and we bought 14 bottles of Prosecco because we're like, okay, we're going to be locked in the house. Kathy's my wife. Thank you for that. Yes. So on day 6, we had to go back and replenish the supply. So yes, and we make a mean sourdough now. It took us a little bit to go through but yes, now we do.
That sounds great.
But our neighbor is better. It just frustrates us. We just go to her now. But that's not why we're here today.
Anyway, sidebar.
However, so what has come out of COVID is that it changed the mindset of how folks can access care. I think it's benefiting the rural communities more just because of the technology behind, the virtual care. However, there are now a number of choices where we have unlimited benefits from mental health. We have unlimited primary care. You can do virtual. You can create a relationship with your physician. They know your name. You know their name. Right. They know your history, and they could be in a different city. But now you have that connection so that you can start help directing people to appropriate sites of care.
Absolutely.
So when you're saying how do we get the word out, it's communications. It's things like today. It's like how do we create a communication piece that resonates. And from a benefits perspective, there are plans now, and I thought back to the 33,000 that we have here in Arizona. I have to imagine there's some that have 2 people in them. Right?
Yes, or less, right?
One or less.
Right.
I'll just say a non-zero number. So there are now opportunities where benefit plans can be offered down to an organization of 1. So ERISA states you need 2+ to create a group plan.
Right.
However, there are groups that are being put together and have been put together where we're aggregating. And so therefore they're joining a group of 20,000. So now they can offer large group benefits down to a group of 1.
Which we all need it. I've lived my life many years uninsured or underinsured, right? So I know what it's like. I also know what it's like to go to the dentist and they say, do you have insurance? And I'm like, what's the cost on insurance? Nope, I don't because self-pay is cheaper.
Because I'm just going to pay it.
Exactly.
I have an HSA. I'll pay it through my HSA.
That's right.
How you do that with the tax advantage dollars. And that should be a topic, too, on the appropriateness of HSAs. But sidebar.
Squirrel.
In that one.
But what you're talking about, though, is the underinsurance is really everybody. So it's not the folks that don't have insurance and have insurance. It's really, if we're looking at Arizona specifically, our mean income is $72,000 a year. If you are in that in that world where you have 2 employees, 5 employees, 10 employees, chances are you probably have 2 or 3 of them that need coverage because everybody else is getting coverage from their spouse. Right. Hopefully.
Maybe.
Those folks go to the marketplace, they're looking at policies that have $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 out of pocket expenses.
Yeah.
So we're asking 12 to 15% of their pre-tax income to be spent on out of pocket expenses.
Right.
And they're buying it because that's the only thing they can afford.
Right.
And so
and I've been there.
That doesn't work.
Right. And when the penalty existed,
right,
I chose to pay the penalty
right.
because that was cheaper than paying the insurance. I've also had that high deductible. I think it was $12,000 out of pocket.
Yep.
I had every surgery known to man that year.
Of course.
Right? I'm like, this is
is
the year of surgeries.
Yep. And that group is the group that does not pay their insurance bills, right? Or sorry, their hospital bills. The folks with insurance, right? Because $7,000.
Number one group.
I use my mom as an example. She works for a nonprofit in Connecticut, makes about $45,000 a year, and her out-of-pocket expense, max out-of-pocket, is $7,000.
Yeah.
Her monthly premium is $688. If I remember
That's
correctly.
her portion.
Ooh.
Her portion.
And breast cancer survivor has to go back for labs, all these different imagings, right?
Yeah.
Not sustainable. Like my poor mom, that's what wakes me up in the morning, right? Is how do I get people like my mom to have affordable health care so that not every dollar.
You should take care of her.
So we tried.
Oh.
We approached the leadership of that company, and they said, you know what, we're fine. We're going to stick with our, I think it's United Healthcare.
The plan they had. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's hard. I mean, what we talk about as an organization is different.
Yeah. So you're a disruptor too.
We are a disruptor.
Sure thing.
We absolutely are a disruptor. And that's the largest roadblock that we have is marketing from a TV perspective. So what does that mean? If you're watching the Super Bowl, you're going to see probably a commercial or 2 from an insurance company. You're going to probably see half a dozen from a drug company. You're going to see, and then the fun ones that we're all watching. Yep. When we build plans, we're using the PPO networks of Blue Cross, United, Aetna, Cigna. That's the household name. But the name on the ID card is not going to have that. And so our largest challenge has been when our members hold the card over and it doesn't have that logo of the Blue Cross, United Healthcare,
familiarity.
The familiarity, they say we don't take discount insurance. Even though our insurance plans are actually richer than the plans that they can buy directly from the carriers.
Yeah.
So it is.
So how do we fix that?
We are a disruptor. It's getting the word out and getting the security, and a lot of it is education. We've learned that we now have to include spouses in our open enrollment meetings because more often than not, it's going to be a spouse that is going to be seeking care with a child, and they're not going to have any knowledge of why we're doing things different. And really what we're asking someone to do is make a phone call before they do something, before they act. So we're putting in member advocates, and the member advocates have no financial incentive in the game.
Okay.
They are paid a fixed fee, period.
Smart.
So they're sitting on the same side of the table as the patient. So when the patient makes a phone call and says, I need to get an MRI done on my shoulder because my wife tripped me when I was skiing and I dislocated this one and I tore off 3 tendons on this one.
He should be a better skier.
It's a weird specific example. I get it. However, when I call and say I need to get my MRIs or my CTs, the advocate on the other side of the table, or the same side of the table as me, is going to say, well, you know what? I see you're in movement to go to this hospital system. That's going to probably cost you about $3,500 to have that procedure. However, if you go down the road here, that'll cost about $700, and that's all they do, so they're probably better at it. How about you go there and we waive your out-of-pocket expense?
Also a no-brainer.
Right.
But how do we get to that answer, right? Unless we have this advocate, unless we have these solutions.
Because we're trained that when I go to an office visit and I pay my $50 copay, that's what it costs.
That's the only option.
They just know that it's $50. Yep. And if I have the exact same, what's the best way to say this? If I have the exact same breakage in the delivery with an insurance company at a BUCA, Blue Cross United Healthcare, or Cigna and Aetna, or the exact same thing breaks with an independent TPA that's transparent, with an independent pharmacy manager that's transparent, and a medical management team in there that's transparent, and an advocacy, the red flags will go up over here because it's an unknown.
Right.
If it breaks at the carrier level, like, it's stupid insurance companies.
Yep, par for the course.
It's just how it works.
Can I just say, though, that's a fun acronym, BUCA?
They don't like it.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
So Blue Cross, United, Cigna, Aetna.
There used to be an H on the end of it, but
Humana.
Humana went to the Medicare route.
Okay. So the challenge, and I appreciate you sharing about your mom, I see that all the time, right? Where many of the nonprofit staff members could realistically also be the nonprofit clients.
Sure.
Right?
Yes.
There you go.
So they're living paycheck to paycheck,
Seriously, yeah.
and they likely need to receive community resources
Yep.
just as well. So I served as an interim executive director for an organization here in the Valley, and we looked at that. We looked at the entire pay structure for everyone there, all the benefits, right, comprehensively.
Yeah, it's compensation package.
It's the whole package. Although I'll say, when I started my career in 20s, I didn't care about the package.
Yeah,
like,
right.
what is my paycheck going to show?
Yeah. What's the number?
Yeah.
It's funny how that changes, isn't
It
it?
changes a lot. So now looking at it to say, okay, from this payroll, we have X amount of staff under 40,000 a year.
Yep, I believe it.
Right? They qualify for our services. That is not okay.
Right.
Let alone everything else that they need to live. And, we're talking about the median average, I think you said, for Arizona was
72,000.
72. And what's our housing market?
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Fair.
Like, how do we
Really
make
fair.
this work?
Yeah. Those are for questions for people that are smarter than me.
Okay, David, you and I have to figure this out.
I can help with finding money that can get redirected with inside organizations as far as benefit plans.
And that is perfect,
Yeah.
right? Let's start there. Let's do what we can do. And that's the
Right.
thing.
That's
we can only do
our
what we
lane.
can do.
Yeah.
So currently, how do you see nonprofit? You mentioned some of kind of the non-traditional benefits, preferred parking, coffee, right?
Yeah.
How does a nonprofit prioritize the well-being of the employees while recognizing that they're under a financial constraint? And what do they do currently, and then what can be done in the future?
Yeah.
Do you think?
Currently, and it's hard to say this, but I know it's the reality of nonprofits because I live this day in and day out. We are so micro-focused on our mission and our community's problem, right? That everything
Right.
else is noise.
It's just external.
It's external, and we don't have time to do that, right? We have to make time. So what is it we need to do? We have to make time. We have to build this into our culture, because the reality is, if we don't take care of our staff, right? One, we're going to lose them. Turnover rate,
Yep.
right? So when
then you got to spend time to
9
do it all over again.
9
All
months?
over
9
again.
months. It
9
costs
months.
somebody 9 months in salary to leave.
Wow.
Because you got to recruit, you got to train,
Yeah.
get them up to speed.
And that cost
9 months.
That cost, what do we call it? Advantage, disadvantage, right? Like, no one has time for that, let alone the nonprofit sector, because we are crunching time in and time out. So first of all, we have to make time to make this a priority discussion.
Yep.
Second of all, I really think that we need to model the behavior, right, of all levels. So like mental wellness, overall well-being, we have to infuse that into our culture by modeling it at all levels.
Sure.
And then I'm going to say assess the employees. What is it they wish they had, right? Hate to be a Debbie Downer, but suicidal ideation and because of mental health is through the roof, right? Especially for our teens and our younger professionals.
Absolutely. Yep.
So when I serve in these roles with organizations, and again, we are just in the trenches, on the streets, doing the work, right? Frontline, essentially.
Right.
I cannot tell you the amount of times that I have had to intervene with someone's life or death choices.
Wow.
And to not have a resource for that person, right? We're literally talking life and death right now.
Yeah.
So what is our solution to that? So let's make the time to talk about it.
It's almost like you can just set something up from a blanket perspective, like an association of nonprofits. Everybody just gets this EAP program,
Right.
Right.
just through a delivery.
We need it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You can do that pretty easily.
And on that note, is that something we're putting into our plans now, or looking into? Is
Well,
that virtual mental health care?
Yeah, the plans we're putting together definitely have that.
Right.
I was from a standalone perspective, though, which is a faster solution.
Sure.
You're going from A to B versus from A to C.
Yeah.
Then it's just reducing resistance. Is that if you can just provide something across the board and just make it easy access and reduce the obstacles, that's step one.
Yeah.
And then we can start having a conversation about fine-tuning things internally.
Right.
And some are doing it good. I mean, we have some FQHCs where, they got their own clinics, or they're using staff from other clinics and they're increasing bed days and patient counts across the street from each other.
Right.
So, I mean, I do see a community, of those individuals that are helping, but
It exists, and let's
Yeah.
just call out FQHC because people are like, "What?
Yeah.
A, B, C, D, E."
A lot of acronyms.
So that's federally qualified healthcare centers.
yes,
Yeah,
exactly. And I think they can have a role too, because
they have to have a role.
from my perspective as a consultant with employers, is everybody is feeling the squeeze of the cost of insurance. It's just a fact. If we have an FQHC that has a medallion for 340B, which allows them to acquire prescription medications at a fraction of the cost, they have a clinic, they can then increase their margin on the delivery of that drug, at the same time reducing the cost to my employer. So if we can create a network of FQHCs,
Right.
where I can have them as like a tier 1 benefit, then now all of a sudden I'm increasing the patient days at the FQHC, which they're all screaming for. They're now, because they have more patients, they have the opportunity to deliver more services, which then creates revenue, which then they then spend on the mission.
Right.
So it just seems like there could be a natural conversation is there a way that we can do this so that the private sector, who we're competing with for talent, at least we can use the systems that are already in place and kind of help everybody.
Right.
Because if I can drop the cost of the private employer and I can increase the revenue of the non-for-profit,
Yeah.
it kind of all makes sense.
We're helping David's mom.
We're helping David's
That's
mom,
right. Thank you, guys.
although she's in Connecticut.
That's right.
We're helping people like David's mom.
We're helping people like David's
Although
mom.
they have an office here too.
They do.
You come across different scenarios, different types of nonprofits. What are like one, maybe two or three pitfalls that you see at the organization that could immediately be remedied by having HR support?
So one of the most common pitfalls I see in these nonprofit organizations is that they don't take the time to audit what they have, right? And I'm talking insurance of all things, right? And
It's more than that, though. It's just their employment files.
yes,
You know,
audit everything.
Handbooks?
Yeah. Handbooks.
What are
What's
those?
that?
Yeah.
Right.
Bring your own cell phone to work.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Yep.
Of course, you can have all the client donor data on your personal cell phone.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that really started. We're going off topic, but
Yeah.
a little bit during COVID too. With this, now we need policies to bring your own device to work,
We do.
right?
That's where our department took off.
Yes.
HR took
Yeah.
off right after COVID because work from home policies had to
Huge.
be implemented.
Well, and so we have that, and we have a dispersed workforce.
Mm-hmm.
So, one, our talent market is national now.
Yep.
Often, it's national. Two, every state employee requirement is different,
Sure.
right?
Mhm.
We're in Arizona, and we all know California is very different
It is.
to our employee regulations. But we could have
And it can go down to the town level.
yes. So there's
Yeah,
so many
that's
different
crazy.
So I would say the pitfall, going back to that, is really to do an audit annually. I would say this is not my area of expertise,
No
but
problem.
I would say annually, what is it we have, right? What is it we need, and how do we prepare for the future? And that is my answer to a lot of things, because yes, we're living in today, but we have to have an eye on the future.
Absolutely.
So how can we prepare our support, our systems, our resources, our infrastructure 3 years down the road,
Sure thing.
2 years down the road?
So if I'm thinking this through, you have a non-for-profit that goes out into the community to serve a need. And without a plan, that's going to be chaotic. So there's got to be, I have to imagine there's project management teams that are working with nonprofits that kind of have the Gantt chart out that says, this is going to happen and this is going to happen, and
Right.
things kind of flow. Would that be an appropriate system that they could already, they already have that talent, right? They already have those tools
Right.
of trying to figure out how to accommodate, because nobody can pull the Band-Aid off on an HR audit. It's just not reasonable. It has to be structured, and it should be over time. Because implementing it is part two.
Yes.
Because you're going to
Uncover
every HR audit we go through, we always learn something we didn't know, and we just want to learn it before there's somebody from an agency knocking on the door telling our client what they didn't know.
Right.
So you kind of get ahead of the curve, but it's discovery. Then you got to come up with the solutions and then implementation. But really, it's project management is all we're talking about. And evaluation, and then maintenance, and then monitor.
And then no, you're right, and I do think that.
So how do we do it so it's not overwhelming?
Well, I think we just have to build out a standard operating procedure. This is what we do, right? Every organization has to file their 990s, right? We have to do certain things, and back to the we have to make time for it, right? We have to see that this is a critical need. We want to take care of our staff because we are here to take care of our community. Our staff make up our community. So why are we not doing this?
Are there conventions or do nonprofit leaders get together on an annual basis?
We do, yeah. Often, right? Even here locally, and I will say across the nation, I would venture every community has an alliance of nonprofits, right? There is essentially an organization for organizations, and that would be the go-to. And then there's several others in addition to that. So there's community foundations, that's another great place to go. But yes, we like our fellow nonprofit nerds.
Right.
Yeah.
Of course we want to get together.
Birds of a feather, right?
Yeah.
And I've only kind of brought that up. I've had some experience with communicating with them, but we also work with some of the other associations, which also runs the gamut of 2-employee companies up to 2,000 life companies. And what they have done is that all of them, and I'm just a part of it. I'm just kind of a fly on the wall seeing it happen. But what these organizations or these associations have done has created a business track. So they'll go out and they'll vet, and they're going to find who's the attorney that we want to bring in that's going to represent the association, so that if somebody has a question on contract negotiation or vendor contracting, if we need to bring somebody in there from a tax perspective to make sure that their taxes are going. So usually it's about 11 to 12 different specialties that the association is creating, and then distributing that out to the memberships. Now the membership has a resource to multiply time, because really all we're talking about is multiplying time, because everyone's too strapped for time. You have a mission that you have to fulfill. That's going to be your focus. You're on a bootstrap budget. That's going to also be on your focus. And if you can time source that through those types of organizations, that could probably reduce some of the barriers to entry, because you've already got the credibility established.
Agreed.
So.
Yes, and do the homework for me, right?
Right.
Bring it to the table.
Bring me the solution that I can implement. Yes.
Absolutely. I think that's great. It falls down to education.
Yeah.
Education, communication.
Sure. We touched a bit on what ArcWood can do with benefits and HR support, but from your perspective, aside from that, what are some other practical ways that nonprofit leaders can enhance their benefits or do something a little different to retain talent? Because that's obviously an issue.
Yeah, great question. And I really think what we need to do is ask our teams, right? Ask our staff, what is it that you need? Do you feel supported? Yes, these employee surveys and stay interviews. I learned that during COVID, right? Let's not have exit interviews. Let's start implementing stay interviews, right? Like, what is working for you?
What a concept.
Right. Did you come up with that one?
Interesting. No, I just heard it.
Oh, really?
I'm going to plagiarize it.
No, yeah.
Oh,
that's
okay.
Great. Yeah.
I just thought it was a known thing.
I thought I was just the only one that was like, that's a good idea. No, seriously.
But I learned it.
We should coin that.
During COVID, where it's like, let's stop having exit interviews. Of course, I do think that needs to happen.
Yep.
But if we implement stay interviews, right, which are maybe 90 days, every 90, I don't know. I don't know the cadence of that. But really using that time one-on-one. It doesn't have to be HR. It could be, just supervisor kind of conversation. Like, we should be having these touch bases, because I don't think we can all wait 12 months to do it again.
Right.
So
Agreed.
The name of the game is taking care of your staff, right? Making sure you have these conversations, but asking them, what is it that they're using? What is it that they appreciate having? Because it might be those pastries, right?
Exactly. Yeah, seriously.
That's true.
And the parking spot.
Right.
But maybe you'll also hear, because I did, I need someone to talk to.
Exactly.
I'm going home, laying my head on my pillow every day, worried about the community members that we're helping. I'm lucky to have a pillow to lay on, but I need someone to talk about what I saw, because we are impacted emotionally day in and day out in this work that we do. So how easy would it be to bring in an EAP employee?
It's very easy, actually.
Right?
Yeah, and there's multiple different tiers of services. We have groups that are specifically physicians. I mean, it's 100% physicians. Well, okay, 80% because they need support. So we have an EAP that a physician answers the phone.
Yep.
We have other EAPs that we're putting in that, we'll have a nurse practitioner answering the phone. It just depends upon where the need is.
And telehealth now, as we talked about earlier, right? That really helps to level the playing field.
Yeah. Well, to your point too, on the mental health side, I just learned 2 weeks ago about new virtual mental health care, where psychiatrists will pick up the phone. If you're having some sort of event, overnight or late at night, you can call.
Right.
And get a live psychiatrist on the phone.
That's fantastic.
Psychologist, excuse me.
That's
to
fantastic.
Talk to.
Right.
Yep.
And a lot of it's app based too. So everything goes on
Right.
everyone's phone because that's how we access the internet.
Right. But is it your own phone that you brought to work? Is that allowed?
Well, I own the company, so the answer is yes.
You get a pass. David, is it your own phone? Don't answer that.
Look, he has two.
Okay.
Actually,
HR
everybody
policy, right?
everybody here does have two phones.
Following the rules.
Actually, Jessica does not have two phones just because she's here 20 years and she's
Grandfathered in.
she's kind of grandfathered in. Yeah.
She got the first phone.
Yeah, we don't know how to unwind that one.
She's still working on a BlackBerry.
Yeah, seriously.
With the flip, the keyboard comes out.
Yeah,
Sorry, Jessica.
The sidekick, that's what it was. Yeah.
There's a funny story there too. We were out with one of our insurance reps, who was a dear friend of ours, and it was one of her anniversaries. I don't know if she had 10 years or something like that. And we're out it was after, I think we were at the Open. He's like, 10 years? You've been with this guy for 10 years? What'd you get her 10 years? I'm like, he's like, Jessica, what do you need? She's like, well, I'd really like to have a new phone.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It was like,
I'm tired of the QWERTY board.
Yeah. Whoops.
so he negotiated a new phone for her at happy hour. So now I think she still has that phone because it was about 10 years ago. So she probably still has that same phone.
It's time for another.
20 years. 20 years.
That's great.
She'll get a watch and a phone.
She needs the Google glasses now.
Yeah. Just plant it in.
What else?
All right, so we've got the nonprofit nerd here. So, what are some tips, I guess, that you would give nonprofit leaders moving forward on how to maybe enhance their teams or enhance operations? I mean, what are you kind of seeing out there in the nonprofit space that you can offer some guidance on?
I think the biggest guidance I would offer, continuing the thread of what I've said, is make the time to have these conversations. I also advocate that if you don't have HR on payroll, you have them on call, right? You have to have that. And then thirdly, if there's an opportunity to bring an HR professional onto your board, even better,
There you go.
right?
Yeah.
Like you want to have, we always think we need an attorney,
Right.
we need a fundraiser, we need someone that can do
banker.
Yeah, a banker and marketing, right? But
Well, those are fair statements.
but why can't it be yes and?
Yes, and.
Yes, and we
an
need an HR leader. So I think that's really important. And
So on the board level, have some sort of HR representation.
Yeah.
Some sort of
have
HR
some knowledge.
expertise. Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I think
That's a great one.
I think there's some simple things we can do, right? But just getting this started, if we're an organization that hasn't been started before,
Sure.
in this arena, right? Like it's time. It's past time.
And I know some of our distribution on our channel here is going to be on the private sector. And one of the things that I thought of is if there's 33,000 nonprofits, one of them probably aligns to something that's important to me. How do I find it? Because maybe there's somebody that wants to be involved in their community, but they haven't found something that's resonated with them. I mean, we all know the big names and the ones that would have all the mailers coming out, but I don't get 33,000 flyers a month. So there's a lot of causes out there. How does somebody go about researching, something that speaks to them that they'd like to get involved in?
Oh, great question. And not where I spend my service time, but I talk to people about this constantly because I'm so passionate about, as professionals, giving back to our communities, right? It goes back to my childhood, how I was raised. It's in my DNA. So there's board opportunities, there's volunteer opportunities, there's donation opportunities, right? So what I advise for that is, no matter where you are in the nation, there's likely a local United Way. Okay. Contact them, look on their website, right? But just see what are the organizations that exist in my community. So yes, here in Phoenix, 33,000. The number could change, but that's the latest fact I have. Figure out what is it you're passionate about, right? Maybe it's healthcare. Maybe it's education. Maybe it's
pets helping people.
Pets helping people. That's a good one.
That's a good one.
So really looking at it to say, okay, what is it I'm passionate about? And you could even do some Google searching, right? Just put that in and to see what exists out there. And yeah, play around with that. But I always say find what you're passionate about.
And is there vetting is not the right word, but I just know that anytime someone knocks on my door or if I'm making contributions or asking someone to make contributions, there's been some research on how much of the dollar stays with inside the organization versus how much goes to administration or fundraising, et cetera, et cetera. Are there just easy things that folks can look for so that they can see a seal or a stamp or something that kind of does the homework for them for that train of thought?
So you're putting me on a soapbox in my disruptive behavior, but I want you to look up Dan Pallotta, right? Okay. Because he does a TED Talk.
How do you spell that?
Dan.
Good start.
So I think it's Pallotta, but Dan Pallotta, TED Talk, and then he has a movie.
We'll just go to ChatGTP and see what I come up with.
There's a movie documentary called Uncharitable, right? So so I subscribe to his disruption, which is it is time to get away from this overhead myth. It is time to get away from how much of these 100 cents in a dollar go towards operating.
That math always works, by the way.
Versus overhead, right? But what we're neglecting is to see the impact. So I highly encourage you to really
I've seen his talk on the TED Talk.
Yeah.
It's powerful.
So it's the impact. It's the impact. It's the impact. It's the impact. Because if we were to continue to perpetuate this overhead myth, right? We are continuing to say you don't need to pay your staff competitive pay. Right? So we're just building this cycle.
I like how you turn that around. I like that.
So we have to get away from that. So I say, what is it you're passionate about? Find that mission alignment. Secondly, what is the impact being made and how can you contribute to that impact?
Because a for-profit entity is specifically analyzing that from a profitability, stock price perspective. So why shouldn't a non-for-profit be doing the exact same thing?
Absolutely.
Get it.
You watched the TED Talk.
I did.
You have to. It's a good one.
I will.
Yeah.
And the documentary.
Uncharitable.
Uncharitable is the documentary, but the TED Talk is separate.
Okay.
And
the TED Talk, it's 10 minutes, 8 minutes or something like that. And it's a really good message.
Gotcha.
I want everyone to listen to it, truly, because that will shift how we see our community, how we see our, nonprofit community partners.
Right.
So with maybe some parting words, because you'll still get some leaders that will say, I can't afford this, or it's too much disruption.
Or too much time.
Yeah.
What are your parting words for that leader? How would you encourage them to, like I know you said, just put time aside, get in there, review it. But for that one person that might be hesitant.
For the one person that might be hesitant, I would say it is on you to do some due diligence, right? It is on you to look into this, do your homework. You could delegate it, right? Have the information brought to you. I did that. I was interim, again, CEO, right? And we had someone who had area of expertise in this. And I said, it's time for us to look at our packages. You have interest, you have time, bring it to me, right? And so even at that level, we can have that delegated and we just need the information.
Right.
So it is on you.
You need a place to start too, yeah.
Yeah, but it's on you to do the due diligence. So.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yep, perfect.
Cool.
This has been a really cool conversation.
It's been fun.
Yeah, it's a real eye-opening. It's fresh just to kind of look at things differently.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I appreciate your perspective and your partnership.
Absolutely.
Because as I've told you numerous times, this is not my area of expertise,
Yep.
but I know enough to say it's time to bring in an HR professional.
Yeah, yeah, it's helpful, right?
Thanks for joining.
Thanks for attending. See you next time.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.